Well, our thanks as always to Home Street Bank for their support of this podcast. If you're looking for a bank that has it all, great people, great service, great rates, this is the place for you. This is my lender of choice. It should be yours as well. Go to homestreetbank.com. It's your one-stop shop for all your banking needs, both business and personal. That's homestreetbank.com. You know, sometimes you just need a good chuckle. Let's do that. Let's have some fun on today's episode of The Buyer's Mind.
Welcome to The Buyer's Mind, where we take a closer look deep inside your customer's decision-making mechanism to reverse engineer the perfect sales presentation. Now, please welcome your host, Jeff Shore.
Well, welcome everyone once again to The Buyer's Mind. I'm your host, Jeff Shore, and this is the podcast where we investigate the way that our customer wants to buy, and we help sales professionals to reverse engineer their presentation to make it easy for their customers to do just that. But today we're going to take a little bit of a different spin, a little bit of a different journey on this episode of The Buyer's Mind, because sometimes it's good just to have a good laugh. If we can't laugh at this business called sales, well, we're probably in trouble. Hey, Murph, Paul Murphy, our show producer. Murph, you're fairly new to this world of sales. I'm sure you've seen it as a fairly intense environment that sales professionals have to deal with. Sounds like a little levity would go a long way.
You know, there's always a point where the stress gets so high that if you don't laugh about something, something's going to break somewhere, right? So you got to find an outlet to just let a little steam off every now and then.
Well, I think you just described Shore Consulting to some extent, right, Murph? I mean, we are a fast-paced company. We are always got deadlines and that are staring at us, and we get a lot of good work done, but the stress can get up there a little bit. I do think, though, that we like to have a good time, do we not?
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's part of the culture we're constantly throwing GIFs at one another just to kind of make a little bit light of situations as they happen. Not that we don't take our job seriously. We absolutely do, but we have to laugh at ourselves every now and then.
Sure. Well, hey, listen, what's the old saying? Take your job seriously, take yourself less so. And I think that that's probably the best environment that we can look for. But I would look at it as it relates to our audience here and say that sales is an often awkward and uncomfortable job. Stuff happens. I mean, look, I once had a salesperson who reported to me who got stuck in an outhouse at a construction site when there was no one around. I mean, at the time it would have been horrific, but it's just great fun to reminisce on that now. Or there was the car salesperson who backed up a brand new car into the customer's existing car. Again, at the time, not fun, but I have to tell you, that's just dang funny right there. Listen, there are slips of the tongue, there are embarrassing gaffes, and hey, if you can't laugh every now and then you're probably in trouble. And we're going to have some fun today. And I'm going to throw not one, not two, but three quotes at you that speak a little bit to the fun that we can have. The first one, this is one of my favorite quotes from Stephen Wright. He says, "Eagles soar, but weasels don't get sucked into jet engines." I just love that quote. It has nothing to do with sales, but it's still one of my favorite quotes. How about this one? The author is unknown on this one, but how would you like to sell this product? For sale, parachute, used only once, never opened, small stain. That's just bad. That's just bad right there. And then finally, from Henry Ford, people can have it in any color they want, so long as it's black. How would you like that as a salesperson to be able to rely on this line? Let me give you actually a bonus one just for the managers that are listening right now. The key to being a good manager is keeping the people who hate you away from those who are still undecided. The great Casey Stengel once said that, so a lot of fun. When we're thinking about sales, I got to tell you, we got to have a good time, and I think we're going to have a good time in our interview today. But before we get to that, let me just offer you a sales tip, and it's related to this thing called humor. How do you know whether to crack a joke in the sales presentation? And the answer? Listen to your risk meter. And if it registers at all, don't do it. I want to suggest you here that you stay safe in the sales presentation. So if it feels even a tiny bit risky, just don't do it. Save it. there's not that much to gain, but there's a whole lot to lose. I think we should have fun in the sales presentation where it's appropriate, but if it feels like a risk, I would urge you, back it off. Well, I'm really interested to see where the show goes next because I've been following this amazing page on Facebook for some time. It's called Sales Humor. If you're the Facebook sort, you definitely want to like this page. And then liking the page led me to a very, very interesting book called The Sales Survival Handbook, written by the founder of the Sales Humor page, Ken Kupchik. And, it's really interesting when we look at sales. Look, we do something important. We provide some very, very valuable service, but we also know there's a lot of frustration in what it is that we do. So sales humor to me is just a regular opportunity to step aside from the chaos and the frustration and the confusion and just maybe while we take ourselves seriously or take our job seriously, we take ourselves less so. So I'm thrilled to have on the show the author of the Sales Survival Handbook, the one and only Ken Kupchik. Ken, how you doing?
Doing great, Jeff. Thank you for having me on.
No, hey, listen, let's have some fun. Let's talk about the book here first because it was somebody at HubSpot wrote this. It's the funniest sales book of all time. And just to give a little sense of that, this is straight from the book. Working in sales, you have the opportunity to make more money and drink more coffee than you ever thought possible, but you also get these bonus benefits: customers who lie to your face, quotas that change as soon as you hit them, management that puts soul-crushing demands on you to produce, and you'll have so much pressure you're likely to experience PSSD, post-sales stress disorder. You clearly have a lot of fun with this thing called sales, Ken. Tell us a little about your background and how you got into just the opportunity to bring a little levity into what it is that we do.
Sure. So, it's funny as you read those things back to me. Immediately my mind went to some of the most brutal sales jobs that I've had. So my first foray into sales after college was I graduated college. I think it was June 6th of that year, whatever year it was, and I started. I think it was a Thursday, and then I started my first sales job on the following Monday. Yeah, and I was kind of blown away by, I had been a waiter before that all through college. I did construction, all these different things. Mm-hmm. I was kind of blown away by two things. One was how unbelievably stressful it was, the job that I went into. I was in kind of a boiler room type environment. Mm-hmm. But the other thing was how much money I made. I made so much more money than I'd ever made before in my life. So this kind of weird dichotomy between being constantly abused, at least at the job that I worked at, but also being really, really well compensated for it, I think is something most salespeople can relate to. Although I hope the majority of your listeners weren't as emotionally abused as I was for sales job.
Tell us about the boiler room experience, because we see it mocked to some extent or portrayed, if you will. You're looking at The Wolf of Wall Street or Glengarry Glen Ross. This is what people say about it. It's unbelievable stressful, but they can make a lot of money. But you almost have to have levity, crude as it might be, just to sort of survive. How well do the movies portray what really happens in those boiler room types of situations?
I think the movies do a pretty good job. I think kind of when you bring up the movies, the one thing that comes to mind is I think a lot of salespeople mistakenly look to those movies as inspiration when in reality they're kind of cautionary tales. Right. Wolf of Wall Street. But I think there's a difference between working on a sales floor where everybody kind of fuss each other up all the time, and you have a pretty good time, and it's it can be brutal, but it can be really fun. I think there's a difference between that aspect of sales and the having a psychopath for a manager. Yeah. So I think the first part is the fun part, working with all these guys, and it's kind of crazy, and it's kind of like a locker room, and everybody's constantly insulting each other. And I talk about this a little bit in my book about how how to deal with it, how to deal with, your coworkers. But I think where it can really become a struggle is if, your manager is kind of a psychopath. And I've had some great managers in my career up until now, but I've also worked for a few that were probably clinical psychopaths.
Right.
So they can make your life really difficult.
Sure.
So there's a difference there, but generally the boiler room culture, it can burn you out.
Right.
But the good thing about the psychopath managers, going back to them a little bit, is some of them, even though, they can make your life kind of a living hell, they can also help you make a ton of money.
Right.
Because they'll push you well beyond what you're comfortable with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Tell us about Sales Humor and how that page came along. I'd like to go right back to the first, ding, ding, ding inspiration that caused you to launch it. And then I'm just kind of curious as if you had any idea how much the page would take off.
Yeah. So, I think there was a ding, ding, ding moment, but even before that, I spent my 20s working in sales. But on the side, what I always did was I got into writing first, and then I got into humor writing. It somehow veered down that path. So I had worked in sales while, working on the creative humor side for a while in my 20s. I launched a board game that I almost got into Spencer's Gifts. I had a satire site that I built up and ended up selling. It was called the Scoffington Post instead of the Huffington Post. It's now defunct, but point is that I had done stand-up comedy a little bit, just for fun. So I had this humor experience, and I had this sales experience, and so I was working for a company in 2014. And the company was focused in the automotive space, and I was looking to build partnerships to get our content out there. And I came across this page called Mechanic Memes, and it had 400,000 followers on Facebook. And it was, funny stuff for the mechanic industry. And it kind of blew my mind that somebody could have that big of a following with just, making funny content.
Right.
And I said, hey, I wonder if there's something for sales, because I kind of had this perfect background, and there wasn't, which kind of blew me away. And so I started the Facebook page, and it's grown. And since then I've added an Instagram page with, has almost 100,000 followers, and a LinkedIn page even that has just under 200,000. And as far as knowing whether I knew it would grow, I did. I think, I knew how big the sales community was. I think it was just a matter of kind of learning from my mistakes as I was growing the page, because when you start a page, you first have, you have like your 50 friends that accepted your request to follow the page. And then you get like, maybe 5 or 10 more that just stumbled onto it.
Right.
And you make a post and you get one like, and you get one comment that somebody says, stupid. And
right.
You kind of got to push through that.
Yeah.
And, at some point it started to take off.
Right. How much do you think that that's a matter of distraction as therapy? When I look at Sales Humor, first of all, I love the page, but when I read through some of the comments that people post, or the GIFs or the memes or whatever, they're just freaking hilarious, right there. But you also get that sense that there's almost a place that people needed to therapeutically let some stuff off their, get some stuff off of their chest, right? So how much do you think is based on the fact that sales can be such a high pressure environment that people just need an outlet?
Oh, absolutely. I think you're 100% right. The audience is super funny. I think this to myself every day when I read the comments, just like you, is, they're funnier than anything that I post if you go through the comments. But yeah, I totally agree with you. And that's, partly why I started the page, partly why I wrote the Sales Survival Handbook, is because, most of the content out there is, rightly so, it's to help people sell more and make more money. But I wanted to take a different angle, which was, okay, let's do some sales entertainment. So I kind of saw myself as the modern, or I should say I saw sales humor as the modern digital equivalent of, these cultural, iconic cultural movies like Glengarry Glen Ross, like Boiler Room, like Tin Men. I said, okay, well, what is the version of that online? And online it's memes, it's, funny videos, it's, listicles, clickable articles. So that's what I kind of set out to do. But yes, it's, there's other groups that have sprung up since Sales Humor launched, and it's really been exciting to watch.
One thing that I find really interesting when I look at the site is that there are a lot of people who you sort of get the sense that they're having their entire life in sales is something of an existential crisis, because they appreciate the fact that they make a lot of money, but you could tell there are a whole lot of people that they just don't seem to be enjoying their life very much. There's a huge amount of cynicism that pops up on your site.
Oh, yeah. And it's, maybe going back to what you asked in your previous question, I think maybe the fact that the content is very self-deprecating, and cynical and, nihilistic. That's how that's kind of how my humor is. Maybe it allows people to, the permission to kind of be brutally honest about about how they feel. But it's tough. I mean, I'm no longer a salesperson in the sense that I don't sell for anybody else. I do my own thing. But it's very hard, once you get in, especially if you get used to making a lot of money, if you really don't like it, if you truly don't like sales, you shouldn't be in sales. But there's this, I think, big segment of the sales population who they make too much money. And, when you have just sales jobs on your resume, it's really hard to transition into something different where, you're not going to take a 50, 60, 70% pay cut. So I feel for these people. And, I'm sure, Jeff, this is probably the same with your career, but I can look back on, these dozens, if not hundreds of people that I worked with over the years in sales, and 95% of them are still in sales. Mm-hmm. And I know for a fact that not all 95% of them want to be.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because for me, I never worked in the boiler room environment. Okay. So I've sold a few different things, but mostly homes. The majority of my selling career was in real estate. And so I really felt like there was a sense of purpose. It's an industry that I really enjoyed. Granted, my customers get a little emotional, right? They're buying a home after all. It's an emotional purchase. But I never had that sense of I hate what I do. I just make too much money to do something else. So, but I get it. I understand the mentality. I wonder if part of it isn't based on the fact that there are a lot of salespeople out there that just aren't quite sure that they're feeling like they're changing the world enough, right? Like they're pitching a product that they look at and they go, I really just don't care about this product all that much.
Oh, I think you nailed it. 100% is, and some of the most profitable industries can be in products that people don't care for. Mm-hmm. But I think there might be another aspect to kind of your story versus other people. So what comes to mind is that, if you sell homes, you're kind of an independent person, you're an entrepreneur, you technically make your own hours, even though it means you're working sometimes twice as long. But I think it's a bit different when you have to be in an office mm-hmm. at a certain time, when you have, a sales manager or multiple levels of sales managers kind of breathing down your neck. I think that can take a relatively enjoyable experience and make it not so much enjoyable.
Right. Are you, do you consider yourself to be a cynical person? And did you find that was something that you had to measure and manage during your sales career?
Am I a cynical person? I mean, I'm a Russian immigrant. So, I was born in Russia. I moved here when I was 6 with my family. So I do think
There's a cultural cynicism there.
Culturally, maybe there's a bit of cynicism there, but I think generally I'm an optimistic person, and I feel I guess in the context of this conversation, I really feel for people who haven't figured it out yet, who are in sales, but they're not in a place where they can be happy. And, I do think there's one trend, and I'm not by any means a behavioral psychologist or anything like that, but I think, software companies are leading this kind of, this massive change in what work and how work environments are supposed to be. And, making, companies like Google, all these big companies have, they value their employees, I think, more than companies might have 10, 20, 30 years ago. And their entire work culture is built around making people happy, employees happy. And I think if that starts to trickle into all aspects of business, I think that'll be good for salespeople and sales forces across the country, where, they can feel valued and get perks that maybe they're not used to. And, at the end of the day, it's tough for sales leadership to, you gotta hit goals, you gotta get, the most out of people. And, it's a very difficult thing, I think, to get it right as a leader, to make everybody happy.
One thing that I find interesting, though, is that salespeople who do get cynical, they tend to take it out on their customers, at least on your site. Now, I recognize on the Sales Humor page, you're getting a lot of the unfiltered comments. I don't get the sense that you do a lot of editing and filtering of the or censoring of the comments that are coming in. But on the other hand, like you, I share that almost sadness for people who take the uncomfortable reality of their job and end up really projecting that on their customers. They end up just not liking their customers very much, or at least you would. That's what you come away from after you read some of the comments.
Yeah, it's tough, because you get in this cycle, and I'm sure you're very familiar with it, where you're not doing so well 1 month, and then you start to your manager's on you, and then you start taking your frustration out on your customers, when in reality the one thing that you need to be doing to reverse your situation is the antithesis of how you feel. So I think it's tough. And to answer your point, no, I don't edit anything at all really on Sales Humor. One, because I can't keep up with the comments. And, if I see something that's, overtly sexist or racist, I'll delete it and ban them from the page. And if anybody attacks Sales Humor, they get banned too. Yeah.
Well, sure. Hey, listen, it's your page. You have that right to be able to do that. Yeah.
Right.
When you're thinking about salespeople and the role of humor in the sales presentation, what guidance do you give people in regards to, how funny are you allowed to be or try to be during an actual sales presentation?
I think it's tough. You got to know your audience, but not everybody should try to be funny, because some people just, they're either not funny, or they can cross the line, unknowingly cross the line. So, one of the things that I've learned, creating humorous content for the last, coming up on a decade, is the difference between people who know how to create good humorous content and who don't has a lot to do with nuance and knowing, really knowing where that line is and being able to walk up right to the line, but not cross over. So yeah, I think it depends on your audience. I mean, I'm sure you and everybody else has tried to make a joke on a conference call or during a sales presentation that felt flat, and then you were mortified. So, I would err on the side of caution.
You look back and you go, okay, I was in the sales position. I was making good money. But deep down, did you just know this is just not for you what you were meant to do? You just had that unrest that said, I need to do something else with my life.
Yeah, I think personally, my my problem has been that I don't like working for other people. So
yeah.
I've always kind of had a desire to work for myself, and thankfully I've been able to get there over the last few years. But I do enjoy selling itself. I don't. I think it's fun, and but when it's your product, when you're selling something that you've created or that you're working on, it's a lot easier to sell it because you believe in it and your enthusiasm comes through, versus when, to your earlier point, you're selling something that you couldn't possibly care less about because you have to make your BMW lease payment.
Right. Yeah. But it's tough. And I think that this is the question that a lot of salespeople struggle with. I know that, many salespeople that I get to deal with on a regular basis, they're like, no, I am where I am supposed to be. I think it has a lot to do with, do you feel like you're providing a valuable service to your client? Do you believe in your product? But I think you and I are probably in agreement, Ken, that if you're only in it for the money, there's a fuse that's already been lit. We just don't know when that bomb's going to go off.
Completely agree with you. And I would, to anybody that's listening to this, if you're in sales or if you're in a particular sales job and you're just in it for the money, then I hope you're saving your money to get out.
That's a great way to look at it. It really is.
Absolutely.
You've got a series of charts in the book that are just great. One of them in particular is about sales trainers. You've got a pie chart there for sales trainers, and you've got it listed as con men being about 80% and actual experts only about 20%. As somebody who owns a sales training company, I just got to tell you right now, I would greatly take offense to that if it wasn't true. I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Well, you are not included in that.
Oh, thank you so much.
I think I don't know how it was, and maybe you can answer this question because you've been around a lot longer than I have in the sales space. But with the internet and being heavily involved in the online sales community, I mean, you just have these guys that are, some of them have it, they're like 18 years old and they're launching these sales courses. It's like,
yeah,
did you graduate high school last week? And you're becoming a trainer, or other people that they're just I mean, the internet's obviously leveled the playing field, but has it always been like that?
I think what gets me more than anything else is the complete lack of original content, or the complete ripoff of something as their own. So, when somebody leads off with, seek first to understand and then to be understood, listen, I get it. That's, as Stephen Covey said it, it makes sense. It's absolutely truth, but you didn't write that. Come up with your own stuff. Hey, here's a concept. ABC, always be closing. Oh, nice. Never heard that one before. Yeah.
Oh, and the the inundation of these motivational memes of every facet of life, and it's nutty. No differentiation whatsoever. I agree with you.
Right. Funniest sales episode from a well-known movie.
The one that comes to mind is from Tommy Boy when he's pitching the guy. When he's pitching the guy and he lights the car on fire.
Dang it,
in his office.
I was going to go next, Ken, and that's exactly the one that I was going to use. You're killing me over here. Yeah.
That's the famous one.
Right, yeah. I would have gone with that, or John Candy in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles selling the shower curtain rings as earrings to teenage girls was very, very funny stuff. So, yeah, there's a lot of creativity out there. What's next for you, Ken?
So right now I'm working on a startup for salespeople, for automotive salespeople. So that's been taking up a lot of my time, hoping to launch it in April, and maybe writing another book after. But Jeff, as a fellow author, I think you understand how much work that takes and how exhausting it is. And
yep.
so I'm definitely going to think long and hard before I sign any more book deals.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, just as an encouragement to anybody who's listening right now, the book is called The Sales Survival Handbook. You could go to salessurvivalbook.com to just get a quick snippet of it. My friend Mark Hunter calls it the funniest sales book ever written, but you can go to Amazon and you can buy that. And then make sure you're checking out Sales Humor on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Ken, I really do want to thank you, because it is a really fun way, a fun little distraction that we sometimes need in the grind of the day to be able to step aside. So thanks for launching that. I think you clearly hit a nerve, and you provided a valuable service to salespeople.
Thanks, Jeff. Really, really appreciate it, and really appreciate you having me on.
Well, Murph, that was fun. Ken's clearly, he's funny. He's an interesting guy. He's a funny guy, but you get the sense he's a pretty down-to-earth, level-headed guy.
He is a level-headed guy, and I was perusing the Facebook site while we were doing our interview, and I gotta say, there were really some pretty funny things on there.
I have to tell you what, I kind of figure that Ken would probably tip his hat to his contributors, the people who respond, but some of the things that people say are, just fair warning to everybody, some of the things that people say are crude, but some of the things that people say are just hilariously funny, and so I think Ken's job at times is just to sort of get the conversation started, and then everybody else jumps in thereafter. But it was kind of interesting just to get a little insight about the perspective of somebody who has actually worked in a boiler room, for those of us who have never done it and have just seen it in the movies. That was interesting.
Well, and you wonder how much of that, coffee is for closers speech do you get when you're living in those kinds of environments? Yeah.
Now, my understanding is that is exactly what you get from the people that I have spoken to over the years who have worked in the environment, that you get a lot of pounding of the heads, a lot of locker room humor, and everything else that goes along with it. And it's, it is a type of environment I don't think is right for me. I'm not going to make any judgments on other people's lives on that, but it sounds like it can be quite difficult. And I think that Ken offered some really good advice there to say, if you're only doing it for the money, then you better be saving all the money you're making now for the time when you just can't do it anymore. That was kind of interesting, wasn't it?
Well, and it's one of those motivations. He talked about being in the food service industry, and I used to be as well. And I remember, thinking, hey, I am going to make a killing on tips. But if that's what you're working for is the tips, and you're not serving the customers, you're just failing yourself miserably.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is just so much wisdom out there directed around the idea that if you go to work for the money, then the money is what you get. But if you go to work to change lives, then you get changed lives. And it is a poignant. And I just want to address that here for just a moment. To those of you who are listening to this episode, and maybe you're challenged a little bit right now, and you're asking yourself the question, am I doing what I am supposed to be doing? And I don't think we ever have to apologize for making good money. If you're one of the people listening right now who says, yeah, I do pretty well in sales, I don't have any apologies for any of the money that I made in sales. But I do think that we have a limited amount of time on the planet, and we have to ask ourselves the question, can I really stand behind what it is that I'm selling? Now, that doesn't mean that you have to look at it and say, if you are not fulfilling, the exact purpose that you're on the planet, that you've got to quit your job tomorrow. For many people, sales is something where it might be a means to another end, and they're looking at it saying, I'm doing the sales job here, and that allows me to be the parent over here, or to serve my community over here, or to follow my passion over here, or my church, or whatever it is. That's great. I would not suggest that that's an opportunity for you to look at it and say, should I quit? But if you cannot stand behind the product that you are selling, if you are working for an organization that's unethical, if you are trying to sell against your own value set, these are things that I think you really have to keep in mind. You really have to test yourself, because this is what's going to eat away at your soul. I'm not suggesting that you have to love every minute of every day, or that you have to have this profound impact on the rest of somebody's life every day that you show up. That's not what I'm suggesting. But if you are selling against your own value set, it'll catch up to you. it gnaws at your soul. It wears away. And it's true. You get one chance at this thing we call life, and you want to make sure that it's a life well lived. So I just want to challenge you. I want to encourage you along those lines that if your life right now allows you to live the way that you want to live, that's great. But if you're out of sync with your values, if you're out of sync with your morals, if you're out of sync with your integrity, you've got some soul searching to do. Reach out to somebody whom you trust and share that and get it out there. And just recognize that you don't want to look back on your life with regrets. You don't want to look back and say, yeah, I did it because of the money, even though it was a complete separation from my own values. I know that we do our best work when we are holistic, when we are living the life that we believe that we are meant to live. So I just want to encourage you along those lines. Take that time, do a little soul searching, and be bold at the end of the day to do the right thing. Well, there you go. Another episode of The Buyer's Mind. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you subscribe to that. Would really appreciate that. Leave a review if you wouldn't mind too. But that's another wrap on our podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. You can find everything you need at jeffshore.com. But until next time, my friends, go out there and change someone's world.